There we go. So now we're recording, and so Blab is very conversational. I just wanted to let you know that, and that's kind of how it works. So right now there's the two of us up, and I thought we could talk a little bit about you know creating scary stories. So today, somebody on Google Plus mentioned you in relationship to Guillermo del Toro, which I thought was really nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
nice.
some really scary stuff. And so this is being recorded and it's on my blog. So why don't you first tell us a little bit about yourself, because you've been writing stories for a long time.
Yeah. So I'm originally from France and from the south of France, a small town called Arles. It's well known for two things. Van Gogh used to be there and did some of his masterpiece, and Arles was an important city during the Roman Empire. So it's a very touristic place. You have a lot of Roman ruins. And I'm starting with that because when I was a teenager and when I was young, um, I remember that I was really impacted by the fact that I was living in a city who has been there for many centuries. So as a teenager living in a place where you have so many rooms around you, old stone, those create a gap between the modern life and the secrets or the story that used to be in that place. So it did inspire me a lot in terms of how much I got inspired by locations over people. And while I grew up, I was a very creative guy and very into writing stories, creating stories in his head and on paper, drawing. But I was also very structured, so I went into an engineer career. I have an engineer background, and that offered me another great opportunity in my life, which was traveling. I got the chance to travel and live actually in countries in South America. That was actually the first place where I moved abroad when I was in my 20s. And I spent 2 years in Argentina, 1 year in Mexico, because I was always better in Spanish than I was in English. So
Okay.
my second language is Spanish over English. And while I was in Argentina, I actually wrote a short story on a workshop, which was in Spanish. And it was obviously a dark story because I've always been interested by stories that happens at night. And that was a story of a taxi driver who got lost in that city, which was Cordoba in Argentina. So briefly, long story short, I got really inspired by location and mysteries in big cities, and that experience of doing this short in Argentina led me to leave my career as an engineer and move to the movie industry. And I worked for several years as an assistant producer, and I got a chance to do a workshop in screenwriting in France mid 2000, and that led me to become a screenwriter for TV. And I worked for TV for almost 7 years as a writer, TV writer for a
Right. You did. And at that time, when you were writing for TV, you were writing in a variety of media. I mean, it wasn't all horror at all. It was
yeah, it
just
was
comedy and a lot of different things.
exactly. In France, we have a tradition of procedural. So procedural, usually, those crime investigation case.
Yeah, we have
Uh,
that here too. It's called
yeah,
call it police procedural here.
exactly. And what I really like while I was writing for TV in France is just the research part of the writing, which requires you to really explore a specific field and discover something unique about that field. It could be wine tasting, for example, or the world of wineries, or the world of, I don't know, it could be world of the homeless in Paris. And by just investigating a specific field that will be where your crime takes place, you discover a thing that could be interesting to tell to people through the story. So it has its kind of a journalistic approach. And while I was writing for TV in France, I also had another job in a web agency. That was another passion of mine. and I start producing my own content, which was always stories that happen at night, scary stories. For some reason, I've always been interested in telling stories that only happens during the nights. From a visual standpoint, I think it's visually more interesting, and it's something that came out naturally in my gut. So I had to tell a story, this kind of darkness.
It's a real challenge for a filmmaker to actually produce in the dark and film in the dark, because there's a great lighting challenge.
Yeah, that's true. It does produce a challenge, but at the same time, from an artistic standpoint, what I feel is very interesting, as opposed to filming during the day. When you film a scene during the day, you don't have any control over the light in the space, because the light is the way it is, and you can evidently move the furniture and change the frame. But at night, you have a complete control over what's happening. For example, if I do that, boom, I'm changing the pace, and I can add another light with my phone and suddenly create another.
Ooh, blue light.
Suddenly I'm playing with whatever I'm very free to create the frame I want, because I'm shooting in the dark. So that's why I really enjoy filming at night, because it's like painting. You create the frame you want, because you can dim everything down, and then from there you start putting lights where you need the lights to be.
The first film that I saw by you was Derailed, and it was just amazing the way that you play with light and dark. And I have some questions for you about creating this story and how you go. And I've read a number of scripts that you have written, and how you go about finding those dark places, because for a lot of writers, that's one of the hardest places to go, is to create the really frightening place for your characters, which makes the audience frightened.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, because in my case, it's something I don't control, in a way that stories start coming into my mind when I don't expect them to come. But I tend to like to wander at night in places, so that's where I get inspired. I go in an industrial landscape in South Los Angeles. I take pictures, and by being there, I'm going to start feeling energy, and that's going to lead me to having an idea for a story. So the process is kind of very organic, in a sense that I let the inspiration comes to me, and then regarding the dark place, what happens, and I have tried to understand where it came from, but I guess it came from my childhood. I had a very, like David Lynch, I had a very peaceful childhood. But in the same time, I was always questioning the normal world, the peacefulness around me, and maybe deep inside, I was always feeling something beneath the reality that needed to be expressed. So a form of anxiety, and that's where I'm able to explore that in each of my situations. I usually start with a location and with a situation, and from there I know things going to shift and seems going to be scary, terrifying, challenging for the main character. That's where I'm interested in having my stories.
Mm-hmm. And I know that, whenever you're getting ready to do a new story, the first thing you do is go out and look for people to help you identify dark places and locations set for the story.
Yeah, exactly. I sometimes get a location before I get a story. So I'm using even Pinterest now as a way to collect frames and pictures that I know are intrigue me, but I don't know what the story is yet. So it's an interesting process to just
Wow.
you
So you
look at
you comb Twitter, you comb Pinterest, just looking for images to spark that story within you.
Yeah, that's a funny process.
Yeah.
You go
Wow.
and giggle.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. I've never, so far, I haven't met anyone else who does that, who starts by just searching for images and letting those images inspire them to story. That's a very unique process. Wow.
Yeah, I really like that. It's it's I guess you spend less gas because you don't have to drive all over LA to find places. You go on Google Image and you type dark forest, and then boom, you have 100 images of dark forest. So
Ah, whoa. Whoa. So, Nico, let me ask you a question. What scares you the most?
What scares me the most? Oh, let me show you my T-shirt, so maybe that will answer the question. We have an interesting picture here. I guess you recognize that. It's from Twin Peaks.
Right.
It's one of my favorite show. The character actually here, Bob in Twin Peaks, was something that really impressed me when I was a teenager. I thought it was a very unique and frightening personification of evil. But on my hand, what scares me, I guess what scares me maybe loneliness, maybe feeling that you're not able to connect with people around you, and feel that you are not able to reach out to other people. That's maybe something that I'm scared about. Yeah, I think I would say that.
Yay. Thank you. You know, that's really interesting because I'm thinking about your films. I know in Derailed and in Seizures, part of what happens to your protagonist is they have trouble communicating.
Yeah, that's a that's a recurrent topic that I go through with my characters. It's probably something connected with myself deep inside, an experience I had when I was very young, or the fear of not reaching out, not connecting. So yeah, I guess that's one of the themes I explore.
Okay, I think that's a basic fear for people, and I think it's one of the reasons that, unlike just having scary monsters in your stories, there's this internal fear that's going on within your characters as they look inside of themselves. They discover that there is a fear that's bigger than they knew they had. I guess that's one way to put it.
That's true. That's kind of a discovery process for the characters, and that's the reason I also love thrillers and psychological thrillers, because they are about the process of recognizing you have a flaw, you have something that does not work within your life, and instead of just ignoring it, you acknowledge it and you kind of face it, even if it's painful, because at the end you might learn something about yourself. That's, for me, the definition of a thriller. And Hitchcock is another big master that had such a great talent in unfolding that concept in his movies. All those thrillers that he has been filming over the years were always about a character, an ability to maybe engage in a relationship with a woman or overcome a fear. And when you look at those movies, the structure is really the structure of a thriller is I discover something that I was not aware of. I am scared. I want to escape the situation, and then I stop. I realize maybe I should grab that situation and make a change. And then at the end, they eventually overcome the situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Or not.
or not, right? And I think one of my favorite Hitchcock is Rear Window. Just
Mm-hmm.
that is very scary at the end.
Mm-hmm. Mine is Vertigo.
Yeah, Vertigo.
Such
Yeah, that's another one. It is. But he's a master at twisting. You know, he sets up these what's seemingly ordinary situations, and then takes that character into this very dark place.
Yeah. Like Shadow of the Doubt is another.
Yes, exactly. So you have a new film there's a Kickstarter starting tomorrow. Is that correct?
Yeah, I wanted to start a Kickstarter for Halloween.
Yeah,
I finally did
so
it.
Tell us a little bit about Amy.
So Amy is a very interesting project because my first short film was produced in Argentina over 10 years ago or more, and in Spanish. So since I'm fluent in Spanish, I wanted to go back to that roots. And I got the chance to meet with a partner who she's in charge of an agency who wants to promote Latino Hispanic talents, mostly actors. And by having conversation with her name is Marianne Labonte, we realized we had the same desire to do something that would be a film, and at the same time will be an opportunity to really work with Hispanic talent. So I had that story already in my head about this one young woman terrified by something that happened to her, and for some reason I knew that young woman was Hispanic, and I wrote the first draft in English, and then I switched to a Spanish version, and that's how Amy came together. It's a fairy tale. It's a dark fairy tale. I usually pitch it as in the vein of Alice in Wonderland, and it deals with very dark topics like child abuse, like fear of yourself. But at the same time, I'm using fantasy as a way to explore those topics, because I think there's nothing more stronger than imagination to deal with the violence of life. So here is Amy, and there is a website that you can go, and it's very easy to remember, is sheisscared.com. Sheisscared.com.
Sheisscared.com. I'll put it here in the comments. She is
scared.com. And there is a video that basically explain why I made this movie, why I'm doing this crowdfunding campaign. To just we almost finished shooting the movie. We're now in the phase of post-production, and that's where I need some support. But it's also a way for me to just, at this early stage, show that there is a story that is very strong and that I'm sure will connect with an audience. So I want the people to get excited and start connecting with me through Facebook, Twitter. So we stay in touch for all the post-production process. And I have amazing talents involved in the movie, from the cast to the crew, with many Hispanic actors from Spain, Mexico, Puerto Rico, and yeah, porque es también, bueno, lo voy a decir en español, es algo que me ha impactado cuando yo era más joven y de estar viviendo en un país latinoamericano. Entonces quería vivirlo de nuevo con ese corto. So I was saying that I was really impacted when I was younger by being in Latin America, in Argentina and Mexico, and I wanted to get the chance to work again with Hispanic talents. So.
Mm-hmm. And your first film, Taxi was Hispanic, right?
Yes, Taxi, my first short film was in Spanish,
Argentina?
and I shot it in
Yeah.
Argentina.
And so we have here posted links to watch Taxi, Derailed, and Seizures.
Yeah,
And
cool.
also, okay, now we have She Is Scared. And I posted your Halloween, also posted your Halloween trailer for Amy. So everybody on
Scared.
Halloween, look for the Kickstarter for Amy.
Cool.
Now, Nico, you've won a lot of awards for your various films and various um, contests. What do you think places those films um, above? You know, you've had some strong competition, and what do you think is the thing that people like about your films?
Uh, oh, should I have to ask the people? I mean, I always love to actually have reactions from people about my films. But what I know works really well in what I've produced so far is I work really hard on the sound design as a big part of the movie experience, and because of those my roots in horror and my fascination for very complex fear, which is not just bloody
Right.
things, it's much more cerebral, and you add to that a very unique layer of sound. I am basically capturing an experience that goes directly to the brain of the audience. So I know that from sure, and you can check those Derailed and Seizures movie that I've done. In watch them with headphones, you really receive something deeply inside. So I guess that's what stand out when people were watching those movies. Like, wow, this is a real experience. It's just not a movie. It's more than that.
It is, and I wanted to share with everyone that when I first met Nicholas, he invited me, to have coffee and watch Derailed, and he said, it's a horror film, and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to say? I'll have to be really polite because horror isn't my genre. And I was just blown away. It was so scary and so frightening in a unique way because it's with the images and the sound. The sound is really amazing in that film, but but it's the what I think really gets people with your films is that it's the internal fear. It's not outside monsters. It's the internal fear that grows inside someone. It's like in Seizures when the protagonist realizes something's really wrong within himself. That
Mm-hmm.
is what is so terrifying. That
Yeah.
the terror comes from inside. It's not so much external. What's external and what's visual in the films are the clues that tell the character something's really wrong.
And I wanna give how do you say a thank you to my sound designer Jamil Burgener,
Right.
because I've been working with him for now 12 years. He's from Argentina, so he lives in Argentina. I met him 12 years ago, and we had that there were some chemistry between his work and my work. He's a very unique and genius musician because he plays with instrument, but he plays sound and pieces based on sound of objects. So he's a very abstract sound designer. And for some reason, we connected really well. And from my first short film, he's been always doing the sound design of all my movies. And I know his work is stand out so much in my movies. So I'm so happy to have that chance to collaborate with him.
Yes, and I want to, I think it's a really good time to stress for writers that you need to realize that a film is a collaborative effort, and that the script is like the skeleton, and the rest of the people involved in the production are what puts flesh on those bones.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you get your idea and you write your script flows along, you know, and then there are all these visual clues as you read the script. And what is so amazing for you as a director is that I've watched you in action, and it's just amazing, Nico. I mean, you know what everybody involved in that scene is doing, and you're on top of it at every point in the scene. And I think that's what makes each individual scene so powerful. That's way beyond just part of the storytelling of making film, I think. Is
I mean, it's, yeah, as you say, film is a very collaborative process. So I have noticed that actually when I'm on the set, I am probably the set is probably the place where I'm the most connected to other people, where I have to talk to 10 different person. I'm going to be able to explain to each one of those person what they need to do and how we can collaborate. And I am not as effective in my life communicating as I am when I'm on set. So yeah, it's because my vision is very clear. So I'm going to be very specific in all the instructions and very open to also suggestions from the crew.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, so I want to recommend to everyone that, you know, Halloween is the time for watching these films by Nicolas, and I'd like to encourage everyone to help post-production for the new one, Amy. And Nico, we don't have anyone hopping into this seat. Anything else you want to tell us about getting people scared, bringing that audience in and getting them involved in the story to the point where they're scared. They're clenching their fists. They're like, you know, on the edge of their seat.
What could I say? I'm just a strong believer on this genre of films, which is psychological thrillers, and I love to see other people works, other filmmaker works, and I feel that making this type of movie is serve the people, because it's in a way a very interesting way to see the world. It's, for me, it's about saying that the world is not the best place. It's not going to be an easy place to explore in your life, but you have to be brave enough to sometimes look at yourself and look at your fear and your flaws, and maybe have the courage to explore them, because you might learn something that will change you and make you evolve as an individual. And that's what I feel why thrillers are so successful. They give the people the chance to live that experience through stories, and to realize that, yes, we're not perfect. So what about exploring that within yourself and learning?
Yes, I think that it's the same basic emotional response that happens even in folktales, you know, where the scary things happen, and it's a way to learn how to deal with the world. Because of how folktales originally started, it was like, you know, a way to say, you know, this scary thing happened, but here's one way that it can be approached. and
Yeah.
I think it's the reason that those folk stories change, through oral tradition they change, and there are certain themes that prevail throughout folk stories throughout the world, but they are always about, approaching life, a new way of looking at life, and looking at things like,
Yeah, that's interesting what you're saying, because I always wonder why Derailed, which was my second short film, became so successful, because it's a story that takes place in Paris on a train station that is very local, but a lot of festivals over the world really received the story. And I think it's for that story, it's because the elements of the story are very close to a fairy tale. There is a dark shadow. There is how do you say, a weak man, or a man full of fear, who looks like a child. You have a figure of a woman who is terrifying, and I think those elements are part of the folklore of tales and fairy tales.
they
So in a
are.
way, when I built that story, I did not realize, but I realized that afterward, that I had created a story that is close to a dark fairy tale that everyone, no matter your culture, will connect with, because in the Greek mythology you had the sirens, those women who
The sirens,
used to
yes.
scream to attract the sailors to crash their boat. And in Derail, there is something similar, but it's in a completely new landscape. So yeah, it's just interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, when I was in college, I studied folklore, and one of the things that struck me at the time was that um, the the similarities of the power of frightening things,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
most what I concentrated on were Basque and French stories, but I read in Spanish, I read in English, which were, the languages that I could read at that time, and the darkness is so universal. Hi, UAI. I don't know if you have any questions for Nicholas. There's a seat open. Um, so Nico, I know you had a time constraint this evening. We have about 5 more minutes. So,
Mm-hmm.
anything particular that you'd like to talk about, scariness and creating horror, and any tips you might have for people who are writing either narrative fiction or screenplays, about what are the essential elements that you would bring in to make your story really scary,
Oh, that's funny, because just 3 weeks ago I wrote an article on my blog about that. So I'm gonna have to consult my blog, but you can actually find that on the website is called Derailed Entertainment, which is the name of my production company. So derailedentertainment.com, and there is a section called blog. So I actually put 5 rules that for me are key rules to create a scary piece.
Okay.
So the rule number 1 was to make me believe in your world. I think that's very important when you create something in the vein of a thriller or horror, to make the world realistic enough so you start believing this is real, this is happening. And so it's very important, I would say, for a filmmaker or a writer, to establish in a very realistic way the world and the characters of your story before bringing the scare, because that way when the scares comes, you feel this is real, this is really happening to real people. So that's the first rule. Rule number 2, create intriguing characters. Once this world exists, and I think the weakness of some not well done horror or thrillers movies is that writers tend to use archetypes, but not complex enough. So, and Hitchcock had a very good say about that. He was saying that it's always interesting to start with a flow in your character and explore even that specific flow as the key element of what defines your character. And he did really well with Rear Window or Vertigo. The rule number 3 is make me care. So it means that's apart from the world that needs to be realistic enough, so I really truly believe it's happening, and the characters who needs to be intriguing enough for me. Well, you need to establish in your story something at stake, something that really matters. Is it a kid that disappeared early in the story and the parents are really worried, so you as a viewer you care for that because you care for that family? Or for the example of Derailed, I early in the story created a scene where you suddenly have a lot of compassion for the lead character. He has a broken heart experience with his ex-girlfriend, something like that, and establish the character, that establish his flow, and you basically have compassion for him. You feel this guy has lost someone he loved, so I care. So that's kind of another techniques. And the rule number 5, and that's a very important rule, again, from Hitchcock, it's create a surprising and unexpected antagonist. Hitchcock used to say the best character in your movie should be your antagonist. If you have a strong antagonist, you have a strong movie. So it's always interesting to think, well, who could be a very unique and unseen antagonist? And there is actually a movie that came out months ago that is having a success in the US and all over the world. That is an indie horror movie called Goodbye Mommy. I don't know if you heard about that movie. It's quite unique. And what's interesting is the antagonist is a mother, and the protagonists are 2 kids. So their own mom is the antagonist of the film. So that's, I think, was a bold and interesting choice. And rule number 5, I guess you'll find it when you'll visit my blog. So I leave some suspense for you to go to derailedentertainment.com and check my blog.
Right. Entertainment. And the Kickstarter for Amy starts tomorrow. So,
yeah, she is scared.com. And
scared.com.
Yeah. Cool.
Bon. So Nico, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been a really informative conversation. And I want to thank you for taking your time on a Friday night. And for other writers that we have on Sunday night at 5 p.m. Pacific time, we have Right Time. So come and talk about your story. And we'll see you Sunday. And thank you so much, Nick.